So I'm Agnes. Thank you for the introduction. I couldn't have done it better. I will start from a bit of kind of a more context in terms of my story into using R, and how actually I became an analyst or started doing analytics. So my background is really nothing to do with maths, nothing to do with statistics. My background is very much banking and finance, but then I came to England 15 years ago, and then I was employed for a credit rating agency. And my first job was about working with very smart mathematicians and building statistical models that would then assess the risk assessment of companies in the UK and around the world. I hated working in the financial sector, which is why I decided to move more towards online businesses. So starting from Simply Business, which is the leading online insurance provider here in the UK. That's how my journey with online businesses really all started. Now, I'm a very much self-taught analyst. I was learning in order to really get to the solution as opposed to learning the actual technique. It was really more about getting to the solution that I was trying to resolve. So really working very closely with the business, with business-minded people, with marketing people, with product people, helping them to use data to make decisions and drive business growth. And yes, quite a few companies I worked for, Yahoo, Moonpig, and currently actually also Google, which is really, really exciting, through Essence Media, which is just incredible because I'm working with really smart people and learning a lot at the moment. So today I'm going to be talking about search analytics. When I say search, I specifically mean Google search. I worked a lot with, as I said, with growth companies, with marketing teams. And a lot of the time, the business is very much dependent on the traffic coming from search, specifically from Google search. There is lots of kind of issues with kind of the quality of the data that the teams are given by default by tools such as Google Analytics, which is why what I've devoted a lot of the time was really finding workarounds that would help the marketing teams to understand what is really driving whether it's organic growth, organic search growth, or whether it's PPC growth specifically. Today, just because I don't have that much time, I will be focusing primarily on just organic search and how we use, or I've used R in order to work with SEO teams. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Google Search Console. So for those of you who don't know what Google Search Console is a tool which is extensively used primarily by SEO teams, and is used mainly in order to improve kind of on-page optimization of the website. So really to identify any issues with sitemaps, and errors, speed issues, and so on and so forth. But in addition to being a tool used by SEO technical experts, it's also a workaround. These are metrics and dimensions you have access to in Search Console. It's all to do with SEO impressions, clicks, position, and your CTR, and that is all broken down by query, page, country, device, and date. Now, if you were to look at Google Analytics, which is the web analytics tools used by most of the companies, not just in the UK, but around the world. And if you wanted to break down the organic search traffic by the keyword that this traffic is coming from, you will see nowadays that more than 95% of that traffic is just not broken down by keyword. And for companies that heavily rely on organic search for growth, it's a big issue because they have no clue what is really driving their growth. Hence, we're using Search Console, which has a horrible interface. If you look on the right-hand side, it has lots of very interesting data, very helpful data, because this is really the only way to understand SEO traffic at the query level. However, if you were to use the interface as is, it's very difficult to really make any meaningful analysis or even to build any graphs. So what we've been doing with R, we're using R to extract Search Console data, and not just to extract it, but also to enhance it. So the data is quite limited, as in, imagine you have keywords a website such as Trainline that I used to work for, they would have millions, almost 1 million of different keywords driving traffic. So it's really difficult to analyze this kind of granular level of data. And the tool itself does not really give you the ability to categorize any of that data. So it's very difficult to analyze it this way, which is why using R and using specifically, sorry, it's not coming through. Okay, so if we were to use R to extract Search Console data, we can have a workaround for all these issues that we have in Search Console interface by default. So interface is limited to only 1,000 rows. Using the extract API, we can have pretty much all of the data extracted, and you can start analyzing it. The interface only has 16 months of data, so again, extracting the data and saving it somewhere, whether it's even Google Spreadsheets or somewhere CSV files, allows you to, over time, to build more history, which for many companies actually does matter, especially during times such as COVID. 16 months is very difficult to do year on years. They are not very, very helpful. Often you want to see year on 2 year or even 3 years ago, which is why you do want to extract the data and store it somewhere so you can see more of a longer term analysis. Now the package that I've been using to extract the Search Console data is simply called Search Console R. Now, in order to, again, extract the data and then store it somewhere, one of the ways, obviously, is Google Sheets. That's another package we've been using to store the data and then accumulate more history over time. That's obviously one of many solutions. As I said, you can have it stored as flat CSV files or even push it into a database. Now, in terms of keyword categorization, so again, as I said, if you have many hundreds of thousands of keywords, you do want to categorize them in some way, and before you start making an analysis or reports. So I would say this: there's many very clever ways of categorizing text, and I'm sure many of you know that. But from my experience working with a number of companies, most of the time, the keyword categorization is really dependent on, it's very different for every different business. So every single time pretty much, the keyword categorization that I've built was pretty much either rule-based, also based on the landing pages. So let's say you have a website such as Trainline. I spent 6 years there, which is why I'm talking a lot about Trainline. So imagine they have blog pages, they have train time pages, they have train operating company pages. So we could use the landing pages plus query level data in order to build a classification of keywords, plus the rules as well. Now, another thing we've also done in a very simple way is country groups, which you can use, again, rule-based, or you can even use the package country code to group them into continents or whatever groups you want to create. Once you have the data extracted, which is by default only daily, but once you have it extracted, you can obviously aggregate it weekly or monthly, and even yearly. And also, if you do have lots of pages, and many large companies, they do, sometimes even many thousands of landing pages that they do, it's difficult to analyze every single page individually, which is why you want to have kind of meaningful to that business group of landing pages before you start using them for analysis and reporting. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the reporting or there is no really way to visualize things in the interface, but once you extract it into R, obviously it's pretty much unlimited in terms of what you can do with the data. So the packages I've used personally to visualize that data were, for example, word cloud and tree map. And I have actually an example of a tree map here. So what we are looking here is this one large box. It's one already categorized group of keywords, and every single little box represents a single keyword, okay? And then we have colors, which obviously represent a particular metric. I've grayed this out because of obviously It's some company's data. This is just an example of how data extracted and enhanced using R can be used to create a dashboard. In this example, we're looking at the dashboard built in Power Pivot in Excel. Excel obviously has limitations in terms of how much data you can pull into it, but as a workaround, I've been using Power Pivot, allows you to pull often quite a few millions of rows. So data already enhanced, extracted and enhanced using R with all these things which I've mentioned, like categories and groupings and so on and so forth. We can then build all kinds of graphs which really wouldn't be possible in the interface by default. We can even do things, metrics that are not even possible in the interface. We can actually report on the number of keywords or the number of pages getting impressions. We can build, this one is a very interesting graph which shows you basically where your page is on Google, kind of visually. You want to be in the green area, so you want to be ranking on positions 1, 2, and 3 somewhere. You don't want to have a lot of red. So it's much easier really to analyze this kind of data. And just another example, very same data. So with this one, we were looking at page kind of report, whereas this one is query level report, which obviously comes with categories as well, slicers, in other words, filters. Now, that's all about Search Console. The other topic I will quickly touch on is Google Trends. Again, for those who don't know, Google Trends is a free tool, it's a web-based tool, but basically a website. Anyone can go to that website, and you can input a keyword. And what's going to tell you is going to tell you the demand, kind of the trend of searches for that particular keyword. You can input a keyword, or you can choose a whole topic. So if you're interested to know, for example, are people searching for Tesla or Mercedes-Benz, right? What we're seeing here, for example, right? Tesla is going up, Mercedes-Benz is going down. And a lot of the time, that kind of often correlates even with actually what's happening in the market as well. So in other words, Google Trends gives you an idea about search demand for a given keyword or set of keywords. And it's often used by marketers and investors, companies in general. It's used to understand market trends, but especially in the context of search. If you are a large company and heavily dependent on search traffic, you might sometimes see a decline or an increase, and you don't really understand what's driving it. You can obviously look at your own data, but to kind of triangulate and really confirm what's happening, you can also look at tools such as this, which is really independent of your own internal data. It's going to kind of validate what is actually happening in the market. Let's say for COVID. During COVID, people stopped traveling by train. If I was to go to Google Trends and just see trend for trains during that time, there was a very big drop. And obviously companies such as Trainline and Virgin Trains and similar, they naturally saw that big drop. The drop was not because they'd done something wrong, the drop was because there was no demand. So this is how Google Trends often is used by companies to kind of see what's happening in the market. And even just to compare brands one another, because this, in addition to giving you the trend over time, it also gives you kind of the relative difference between the things you're comparing. You can compare up to 5 things at a time. Now, again, the tool is great and it's free, but comes with limitations. You can't automate it. You can't pull more than 5 keywords at a time. You can only pull 1 country at a time, and so on. It's quite manual. So if you wanted to have a report, have a data set shared on a more regular basis within the business, you want to automate that, right? So the way you can do that is obviously gtrends in R. So that's the package I've personally been using with a loop. It's kind of looping through Google Trends and pulling all the keywords that I'm interested in. So that's a workaround for me for the kind of the issues that you face when you're using the usual interface. I've kind of touched on that already, the different cases, why and how you would use Google Trends, and I really strongly recommend that to anyone who especially works with the digital marketers, and in particular people within SEO and PPC. And these are the two things I went into a bit more detail. I just very quickly touch on a few other kind of examples that I've used R for in terms of search analytics. There's loads of different examples. I'll just mention a few more. I've used R to extract Google Ads data. Google Ads data usually at the query level. So again, if I was to analyze Google Ads query level data in Google Ads itself, or even in Google Analytics, I'm going to have lots of different keywords, very difficult to analyze those keywords individually. So in a similar way that we've categorized the SEO keywords, we can actually often reapply the already built categorization from the SEO data. You can kind of cross-apply it to also PPC and vice versa. In fact, in practice, what often happens is, for the same business, if you were to look at SEO keywords, so organic keywords, and PPC keywords, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and you would expect that. But there's also going to be a lot of keywords which are present in the organic search results, but they are not present in PPC. And now let's say you're a marketer and you see it as an opportunity. Let's say you're a PPC team, and then you look at SEO keyword level data. That kind of combined data set of SEO and PPC is going to allow the PPC team to kind of enhance the keywords they are targeting. And vice versa. Let's say you are a SEO team and you look at the keywords that are driving paid search traffic. You can use that to come up with ideas for more content that you should be creating, like blog pages and so on and so forth. So Google Ads is just another example of how I've used R. And really, you shouldn't be looking at search in silos, just SEO or just PPC. If you really want to be analyzing it properly and understanding search properly, you need to have data which is consolidated, both SEO and PPC, and then you analyze them together and see the synergies between the two. So I kind of mentioned, so incrementality means many different things to different people. And in fact, I'm learning a lot right now and working with Google at Essence. So when I say incrementality in this scenario is, let's imagine you're a large brand, again, such as Trainline. Trainline has very good organic rankings. So for things such as train times, in the UK, if I was to go to Google and search for train times, Trainline is going to rank organically very well, somewhere at position 1, 2, or 3 most of the time. But then there's also a PPC team who is actually also bidding on the very same search terms. So what often happens is, if your organic rankings are strong, and you're doing also PPC for the very same search term, you are likely to be cannibalizing your own organic search traffic, which would have come to your website anyway. And I've seen that happening again and again and again. And that happens usually because of the way how teams are structured. The SEO team has their own budget, PPC team has their own budget. They are kind of usually not working together, they are working against one another. It happens all the time. And it happens also because the data, like combined data, is just really not easily available to them. The SEO team uses a very different set of tools, and PPC team uses a very different set of tools, which is why we need solutions such as R, which allows to combine both data sets, enhance them, and then provide coherent report which covers the entire search. And then that allows the teams to really understand where the paid search is actually incremental versus where it isn't. Obviously, it's going to make much more sense to be spending on keywords for which you're not ranking on page 1, maybe page 2, page 3. With this kind of report, you will be able to identify those areas, or you will, even if you take no action, that gives you insight into what you're actually doing to your own organic search. And the last bit, I've not done it for quite a while. I've done it when I was at Yahoo, actually. But yeah, I've used also R to scrape SERP, so SERP as in search results page. So let's say you want to monitor your PPC competitors, see who's bidding. There are alternative tools, but they're not always great, and they may not exactly give you what you want, or maybe you just don't want to pay for them. So what you can do is you can scrape SERP results for both paid and organic, and obviously keep the record of that data and see what happens over time, and take actions as well. So I think that's it. That is me. I'll be happy to take any questions. Yeah, I was going to clarify that from the very beginning. I'm not sure if I did. I use R. I like R, but when I use R, I use it as a kind of just to get things done, to get them done quickly. I found R quite easy to learn when I was, a few years ago, when I only knew SQL back then. And then I came across R because I wanted to do a very particular thing. And this is how I learned R. I only learn something when I actually need to use it. I don't typically have the interest even, or usually the time to explore other things. I'm really learning on the job, and it's pretty much most of the things I know in the field of analytics is really learned this way, and I honestly believe this is probably one of the best ways to learn, especially when you see your insights and your reports being really taken seriously and actions being taken within the business. That's very encouraging to me to actually see things in action, and I find R fairly easy to understand and do what I need to do with it. It's not always my first choice. If I had other options which are easier, quicker, obviously I would go for them. But a lot of the times, for the cases I've mentioned here, I use R all the time. That's me. Thank you.